Hello, the 2011-12 federal budget is a bad budget from a weak government. This year's budget deficit has soared to $49.4 billion, the second largest since World War II, and $8.6 billion worse than the forecast in last year's budget. Labor is incapable of delivering a surplus budget. It simply cannot manage money and continues to spend beyond its means. Spending decisions taken by this government have increased expenditure by around $19 billion in the past 6 months alone. The forecast budget deficit in 2011-12 has blown out by $9.6 billion to $22.6 billion. Net government debt has climbed to a record $107 billion in 2011-12. And the government is borrowing $135 million a day. Labor has hit Australian families and businesses with $6 billion in new and higher taxes. And this is the first budget for 8 years that has not provided tax cuts for everyday Australians. Labor has also lost control of Australia's borders. The cost of offshore asylum seeker management has blown out by a further $1.75 billion. Australian families are now paying for Labor's failures on border security at the same time as Labor has cut spending on defence. The new arrangements for taxing company cars will slug small business operators, tradesmen and farmers with increased costs at a time when they're already doing it tough. Regional Australia has again been shortchanged by a city-centric government that's cut $500 million in regional funding. There is not a single new cent in this budget for road or rail projects across the nation. The omission of the carbon tax means there is a hole at the heart of the budget, and the government's claim to deliver a surplus in 2012-13 can't be taken seriously. What we do know is that under the Gillard-Brown carbon tax, average power bills will rise by $300 a year. Petrol prices will increase by 6.5 cents a litre, and grocery prices will increase by 5% at a carbon price of $26 a tonne. Labor and the Greens have committed to introducing a carbon tax from the 1st of July next year, but have provided no detail in the budget, adding further uncertainty for Australian families and businesses. The budget fails to ease the rising cost of living on Australians and does nothing for families who face higher prices every day. Electricity prices are up 51% since Labor was elected. Grocery prices are up 14%. Education and health costs are up by 20%. And there's been 7 interest rate rises in a row, increasing the average mortgage repayments by $500 a month. And the government will strip $2 billion from families by freezing the indexation of key family tax payments and income thresholds for the next 3 years. This is the first budget in 8 years that has not provided tax cuts for everyday Australians. Instead, Labor has hit Australian families and the economy with more than $6 billion in new and higher taxes. Labor's plans to means test the private health insurance rebate will also hurt families. Labor is being tough on families because it's failed to be tough on itself. Julia Gillard's out-of-control and wasteful spending has resulted in the budget deficit soaring to $49.4 billion this financial year. The expected deficit for 2011-12 has blown out by $9.6 billion to $22.6 billion. Labor's reckless spending is fueling a debt binge that has now climbed to $107 billion, or more than $4,700 for every single Australian. That means Labor has to spend around $20 million a day, every day, for the next 4 years, simply on making its interest repayments. This financial year, the Labor government is borrowing $135 million a day to pay for its reckless spending. Labor's failure to control our borders has increased the cost of offshore asylum seeker management by a whopping $1.75 billion since last year's budget. Labor's Malaysian solution will cost $292.3 million. The Computers in Schools program is blown out by a further $200 million, taking it to $1.4 billion. And Labor is spending another $11.6 million to clean up its Building the Education Revolution mess.